A cold, dry start in Toronto, a big fourth-quarter comeback at Scotiabank Arena, and a new flashpoint in Canada-US trade, all while Canada's World Baseball Classic run ends one step short. Later in the brief, the key timeline to watch is Ottawa's fast-tracked submarine decision, because it signals how Canada wants to defend the North and how quickly it thinks it has to. Toronto's weather first. Around 1 and down to -2 degrees Celsius today, with no rain or snow expected. And in Toronto sports, the Raptors gave the home crowd something to hold on to. They rallied past the Phoenix Suns 122-115 last night, after trailing by 10 late in the fourth. Brandon Ingram led with 36, and RJ Barrett's 9 fourth-quarter points included the go-ahead three, with about 3.5 minutes left. Toronto's next game is at home against Detroit. In baseball, Canada's best World Baseball Classic run to date ended in Houston. The U.S. beat Canada 5-3 in the quarterfinals, with a tense middle stretch where the American bullpen wobbled and Canada pushed back. 3 runs in the sixth capped by Bo Naylor's 2-run homer. But the U.S. closed it out. David Bednar escaped a 7th-inning jam, and Mason Miller struck out the side in the 9th. The Americans now head to Miami for a semifinal Sunday against the Dominican Republic. Turning now to the bigger thread, Canada's trade and security posture is being pulled in 2 directions at once, by U.S. tariff pressure on Canadian industry and by a rapidly shifting global energy picture tied to the war with Iran. Here's the key point. Tariffs and commodity shocks are no longer separate stories. They're blending into one negotiation landscape where Canada's leverage can rise in one area, like energy and key inputs, while falling sharply in others, like steel exports. On steel, the hit is getting clearer in company results. Algoma Steel says shipments fell 31% in its most recent quarter, and it reported a much wider net loss, along with more than $60 million in direct tariff costs. The company's CEO described the U.S. 50% tariff, first imposed last June, as effectively breaking the cross-border model that had existed for decades. The industry's argument is straightforward. Losing U.S. market access pushes excess product back into Canada, which weighs on domestic prices and squeezes margins. Why it matters locally. This isn't just a headline about international trade. It feeds directly into Ontario manufacturing supply chains, project costs, and jobs linked to steelmaking and steel-using industries. At the same time, energy politics are getting more complicated. The U.S. has issued a 30-day license allowing purchases of Russian oil and petroleum products that are already stranded at sea, saying it's a narrow, temporary move to stabilize markets disrupted by the Iran war. That decision drew public criticism from several allies, including Canada, which says it will keep its sanctions on Russia and the so-called shadow fleet. U.S. officials argue the waiver won't meaningfully enrich Russia. Critics, including Ukraine's president, say it risks doing exactly that. The risk here is that short-term market management becomes long-term policy drift, where sanctions regimes start to look negotiable whenever prices spike. And there's a second-order economic effect. Rising costs for oil and fertilizer can disrupt supply chains and reshape bargaining power in North American trade talks. Some analysts are now openly suggesting those dislocations could give Ottawa leverage in CUSMA negotiations, particularly where Canada can position itself as a stable supplier of energy and agricultural inputs. One more U.S. trade signal to keep in mind. Washington has opened Section 301 investigations into 60 economies over forced labor enforcement, and Canada is on the list. The administration is framing these probes as legal groundwork for more tariffs after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down a key tariff tool it had relied on. Canada says it will work with its CUSMA partners on a North American approach to forced labor supply chains. But the practical concern is that compliance investigations can become tariff pathways. Mid-brief reset. We started with game results and local wins and losses. But the through line today is leverage. Who has it, who loses it, and how quickly it can change. Now, back in Canada, there's a smaller trade win with a clear local angle. Canada and Mexico have agreed to allow fresh Canadian potatoes into Mexico for consumption or processing. It's a boost for Prince Edward Island growers and the federal agriculture minister says shipments could start as early as this fall, once implementation details are worked out. In Ontario education, a story that will land for many families in the GTA, unions are pushing back hard after 331 Peel District School Board teachers received layoff notices, 172 elementary and 159 secondary, after being declared surplus to the region. The province says these notices are routine planning. Unions call it a manufactured crisis driven by underfunding, warning that special education, guidance, libraries, and English as a second language programs could be hit. Meanwhile, the province has announced a $750 annual classroom supply allowance for elementary teachers, delivered via prepaid card and a provincial ordering portal. Educators say it's helpful, but doesn't address deeper staffing and support shortages. Act 3, what to watch next and what's still uncertain. On the main thread, trade and security, watch 2 timelines. First, the submarine procurement decision. Ottawa's bid window is closing in early April, and officials have signaled a winner could be chosen as soon as late June. That decision will be one of the clearest indicators of how Canada is prioritizing Arctic defense in a faster-moving threat environment. Second, watch how the U.S. uses its new Section 301 probes. If the USTR moves within months, as stated, that could become the next pressure point in Canada-U.S. trade, especially alongside steel tariff talks and any CUSMA renegotiation strategy. And on the energy side, the big uncertainty is duration, whether the Russia oil waiver truly ends in 30 days, and whether oil and fertilizer prices stabilize or keep rippling through costs across the economy. That's the brief for Saturday, March 14th. Stay warm out there, and I'll be watching those June decisions closely.